Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the fate of the Furious. There will always be big budget summer blockbuster type of movies that Hollywood stars will claim they only made for the fans. And most of the case, I guess that's sort of true since they're really crappy and only true loyal idiots would like. But in terms of Fast and Furious films, they're the kind of films that both critics and fans absolutely love. In fact, most critics who are writing about it, I notice, are total fans of the franchise and can talk about the continuity and everything like that. Fast and Furious has extended long past what anyone thought it would ever do. No one thought it would get to 8 movies, and kind of becoming both a self-parody thanks to the work of Chris Morgan and Justin Lin, and just the extreme ridiculousness of it, but also being about family. And I notice people keep making this joke, hashtag family. Was that in the movie? I don't know. Is that like a joke? I guess it's a joke. People just put hashtags on things. But the 8th film in the Fast and the Furious film doesn't disappoint in terms of being escapism and an exceptionally fun, stupid, silly blockbuster movie in the best way that Hollywood can really have to offer. And it kind of just keeps one-upping itself, and this continues to do so, them running away from a sub and so forth. But it kind of feels like more of the adventure set pieces, which are really what you come to the movie for. It's what kind of brings you in, and what makes even lesser Fast and Furious films work as well as they do, is if you have a crazy set piece that you can remember and laugh about with your friends both during and after you see the movie. And I think Fate of the Furious understands what generally gets to work about it, but it kind of just doesn't have the one thing that, you know, when we're making the hashtag family joke, is that family, I guess, or the family of the Fast and Furious universe is sort of important to it, and you need to have various members working. Now, clearly, you know the plot of this, and going through it is a little silly, but Vin Diesel, or Dom Toretto, has turned to the dark side because Charlize Theron's character of Cypher has something on him and turns him evil to do her evil bidding and do international hacking things, and then the rest of the crew, they have to try to stop him and figure out what exactly is going on as they team up with the bad guy from the last film, Jason Statham. This film is very similar, I guess, in that way to Fast 6, in which Letty was bad, who came back from the dead after being killed in 4 and came back in 6. And in that film was actually criticized at the time of not focusing enough on the family aspect, which is important. This film focuses less on the family aspect, which is odd considering Dom, who is, I guess, theoretically the father, and I guess Paul Walker was the mother? Or no, I shouldn't be putting gender roles on the relationships in the Fast and Furious films, so I apologize for that. I guess Dom's the patriarch? That's still gendered, isn't it? But Dom basically is kind of the head of it, I guess. And so him going bad is kind of like a major point in the franchise, but it feels like the deceit of Letty both not letting her know she was alive and being evil sort of felt a little more emotional than this does. This doesn't feel as emotional, and it kind of doesn't feel as important and dark as that did in terms of relationship-wise. I don't think these films feel necessarily that dark. But one of the things that also suffers is Paul Walker not being in these films. No disrespect to Paul Walker, R.I.P., but I never thought I'd miss him from any sort of movie. He's not a great actor, but he actually, you can tell he added something, particularly with Jordana Brewster's Mia character, and even the characters of Han and Giselle, as they had interesting arcs going on that were side kind of plots to what's going on. This film is almost too focused on Dom, and, you know, Ludacris and Tyrese's characters are funny sidekicks, but they don't have enough going on side plot soap opera wise to really get these to be like the genuine awesome ridiculousness that Fast and Furious films work best as. Not having that element, I think this film actually sort of suffers from it, and it makes me wish Han would come back or Giselle would come back. I don't think that's happening, although maybe these are so successful it wouldn't be a step down, would it? But not having those elements, it still can work, and I think the set pieces in this, I actually liked overall more set pieces in this than I did like in 7, particularly the end sequence. The end sequence in 7, I like had to remember when I was thinking about it. I was like, I don't remember liking it. I was like, oh, well, Hobbs with the Gatling gun was fun, and like, I still had fun with 7. This one I think I loved more. I'd maybe get this on Blu-ray before I got 7. I've never gotten 7 on Blu-ray, whereas 5 and 6 were like absolutes. I think 8, Fate of the Furious, nice pun guys, and Fast and Furious 6 are very comparable in that they're way more about the set pieces, they're way crazier. One thing that F. Gary Gray, who's, this is his first Fast and Furious film, obviously the director of Straight Outta Compton, veteran music video director, and The Italian Job, he kind of brings back the thing that Justin Lin brought when he was doing his Fast and Furious films, particularly with 5 and 6, as kind of pushing this as far as it can plausibly go in in the ridiculousness. Now, frankly, that's a series trope at this point, and Chris Morgan's definitely really responsible for that continuation going throughout. But in terms of nailing them as well as they do, I don't think I've seen anyone do it since Justin Lin, as well as F. Gary Gray. And frankly, I would love for Justin Lin to come back. I kind of feel like he's more of the auteur of the franchise than like the guy who directed the original, or John Singleton, or anyone else who's been involved. He's kind of the guy in my mind, but I think Chris Morgan's been able to keep these, because Fast 5 is probably the tops in terms of Fast and Furious films. Everyone after that has kind of felt a little lesser, but this feels like there's a consistent kind of level of quality to most of them, and I think the reason for that is Chris Morgan's writing. I think he's actually a pretty decent, stupid, silly blockbuster action writer, better than we probably have most of. The fact that I know this guy's name at this point, I don't think he's like, you know, Shakespeare or something, but you know, I feel like he actually sort of knows how to have fun with a blockbuster better than most people. Most people aren't going to be like, let's have them chase a sub in this ridiculous way that doesn't make any sense, and the audience is going to believe it because we're so used to believing the kind of cartoony ridiculousness. This kind of plays like the G.I. Joe movies probably should, so maybe they should, you know, maybe get Chris Morgan to do those, because that's really what you want from it. Everyone acts like the MacGuffin thing really matters, and these films kind of play them like, yeah, they're a MacGuffin, who gives a shit? I mean, it's almost like the Lego movies, but they play them as serious, but not so serious. I mean, it's really riding the fine line of tipping over to self-parody. Now, there's certain things about the action sequences. I think the opening action sequence felt a little too similar to one we just saw in XXX3 with Vin Diesel, and that was a little too close, particularly because Vin Diesel produced both, so you'd think he would have known. And a lot of people have complained about that, although I love that they had a sequence in Cuba, and I love seeing Cuba and things like that. In terms of ridiculousness, if we're comparing opening action sequence, I think XXX3 had a more fun opening action sequence, but I actually sort of loved aesthetically the Fate of the Furious action sequence. Then it had crazy action sequences, like particularly the self-driving car thing felt like, you know, they're really trying to say something about privacy in the age of hacking, which I thought was, you know, a nice social commentary, but also you had like this ridiculousness with cars, which could play off as CG, and I heard a couple people mention they don't really play off the comedy of that they really could have, and I sort of wish they had. Other than that, I thought that sequence gets like really crazy, particularly a sequence where Vin Diesel's like in this like crazy black armor, like fighting off them, shooting him. That sequence really went for it. You always have to have an action sequence in a Fast and Furious film that's not like the end action sequence that is really amazing, and that one was in fact very great and really ridiculous and like, holy shit, what am I watching right here, and just kept adding on parts. That whole New York sequence and the end sequence with the sub is just epic, partly because it has two really great sequences cutting between each other. It's kind of like the Return of the Jedi thing, but like if it was all awesome, I guess. Although, is Return of the Jedi not awesome? I don't think so. It's not Revenge of the Sith. I mean, let's be real. Fate of the Furious, the sequence where they're chasing the sub and then Jason Statham with the baby, which was really inspired and amazing. Very unsafe for babies though. I really love that sequence, and the thing with the sub and them chasing the sub and like the Rock moving a missile with his bare hands and turning it around at them, and like that was absolutely ridiculous. It is a little bit of a spoiler, I guess, but this has been out for a while and you're pretty far into the review, so like I don't know what you're expecting from watching a review for a movie you didn't want spoiled, so whose fault is it really? But spoilers. The continuity in these films doesn't make any sense. That was already hilarious that Tokyo Drift takes place during 7, or like I guess at the end of 6 into 7, right? Which was bizarre. And then Fate of the Furious has the thing that Dom, the reason he has kind of defected is because he has a daughter with the police officer from 5, apparently, when they had sex, I guess, when they were together at the beginning of 6. And now that she has a child who's presumably about 10 months to a year old, right? So basically, the timeline in this, adding 10 months to 9 months, 19 months, is not that long. There's probably like 2 years between 6 and 8, which in our time is like 4 years, which is interesting, the continuity. In this 4 years, we had 6, Tokyo Drift, Fast 7, and this in 2 years. But that sort of makes sense, I guess, but not really. But I like how they like sort of don't give a shit about that. I think Vin Diesel kind of emotes a little more in this. A lot has been said about Vin Diesel's ego with this film and being the star of the franchise and seeing The Rock kind of taking the lead of it. He's still the star of it, and he gets to like maybe emote more than he usually does. I don't know if he's really that much better at doing that. I kind of just like him being kind of the lughead in the action movie, but I still thought he did a pretty good job in this. But he kind of like overwhelms the movie in a certain point because he doesn't give everyone else like really cool like side plots to go on. There was kind of the Jason Statham The Rock thing, and supposedly that spinoff is something Vin Diesel asked all the prints to be recalled and the post-credit sequence taken off because he's insecure about this spinoff or something. I mean, I loved the interplay between the two, but there wasn't really enough of that. There was like just tastes of that, almost as much as Ludacris and Tyrese really. But I don't think they're going to give them their own movie, although I would probably like that. How is Tyrese so funny in all these, but like he's never in any other movies? It's kind of weird. This is kind of an odd Avengers of the Fast and Furious films, or like shitty 2000 action movies or something, and it just continued to go on far past it ever should have. Like, how did this steal what the Expendables are doing and then keep being more successful in moving past Expendables movies is ridiculous. They kind of waste Michelle Rodriguez, which is kind of bullshit, because like when Michelle Rodriguez got bad and she shot Vin Diesel, it was this big dramatic moment and they like moaned about it and shit. And in this, like, I feel like the same wouldn't have happened, and they even have a segment quite similar to that. The similarities to 6 are quite real with this one, but I think 6 kind of nails what it's doing better, but I think this flows better than 6. 6 feels very weighty and feels almost like too long, like they were like, oh shit, how have we extended this? I almost even missed the fact that like 5, 6, and 7, all of this thing, like this could be the last one, because holy shit, how have we been doing this for so long? And at this point they're like, well, okay, let's be real, I think we're just stuck making these for the rest of our lives or something. Supposedly this is the beginning of a trilogy, but like I don't really understand after seeing it how it is, but hey, I guess so. Helen Mirren has like 2 scenes, but it's very memorable, although she's the mother to Luke Evans and Jason Statham, none of which have consistent accents or look related at all, but it's Fast and Furious, so who are we kidding? Charlize Theron is kind of wasted, and how did you have Furiosa in a Fast and Furious movie and she doesn't get in a car? Foul on that one. The Rock doesn't really get as much to do. He was much more a part of it than he was with 7, which was kind of my biggest problem with 7, but I still feel like they need to give The Rock more to do. He has so much more charisma than Vin Diesel. It's ridiculous, and really I do sort of agree with like the Vin Diesel Rock should have shared much more screen time, and there should have been more like on-screen chemistry of how much they hate each other. Probably would have helped this movie out a lot. I would love to see feud The Rock versus Diesel, just like the feud Betty versus Joan, because that seems to be a big Hollywood feud. Now I think The Rock should be better utilized. It's something that I think 5 and 6 used him a lot better than 7 and 8 have, and 8 did a much better job than 7. I think I like 8 a lot more than 7, frankly. I wasn't as big a fan of 7 as most people. The newer members of the team, the one girl from Game of Thrones, whose name I should look up, she kind of fits in better, and certainly Kurt Russell's just amazing in anything, and I think he really gets how fun and silly this whole thing is and brings this kind of self-awareness in his acting to this that works absolutely perfectly. But then like Scott Eastwood, who apparently, what I've heard through the How Did This Get Made podcast, various other things, the idea was that Kurt Russell was going to play Paul Walker's dad and Paul Walker would be the Scott Eastwood part. They kind of, instead of just like forgoing all of that, they changed that and made Scott Eastwood in the role that Paul Walker would have had at this point. And Scott Eastwood, frankly, towards the end wanted to like boo every time they cut to him. Like, I really do not like him in this. Hollywood, stop trying to make Scott Eastwood happen. He's attractive, but that's like it. It's kind of like when people tried to put Denise Richards in a Bond movie and everyone hates it, although I think I might like her more in kind of a ridiculous thing and not in like because she's a pretty lady thing. In this, like, Scott Eastwood, like, he was in Suicide Squad, he's been in 2 Fast and Furious films. No one's seeing a movie for this fucking kid. It's not working. He's not Clint Eastwood. He's not even Jeff Eastwood. I don't know who that is. Is that a person? I'm not gonna look it up. He's like kind of like the Frank Stallone of Eastwoods. I guess he's good looking, but like he's so uninteresting. He doesn't play off anybody well. I like that they all just like sort of make fun of him, but that's kind of what Fast and Furious people do. And then he's included in the end family thing. I'm like, fuck you, get out of here. Just cut him out, put Kurt Russell in his place. Like, seriously, you don't need him. Fast and Furious films work best because they are, in fact, actually about family. As much as we joke about it and talk about the dumb drama stupid, when it's not there as much as it was in 5 and 6 with Han and Giselle and Mia and Brian and Vin Diesel and Letty, and it really works. These films work a lot better. You kind of need those moments to balance out the action sequence ridiculousness. And although this shows you can just have as much action sequence ridiculousness and still sort of get it to work, I think when the series really gels and really excels and really hits the nos all full hard and stuff, it's because it has that in it with the action sequences, because it has that family in it and has that kind of soap opera drama. And when you don't have that, it just doesn't feel really as fun. So I still really like Fate of the Furious. I had a phenomenal time. It's probably, of the non-Justin Lin ones, my favorite. if that makes sense. I think Chris Morgan's still doing a great job. I still want Justin Lin to come back at some point. And I sort of like how they did the ensemble, but it almost feels like Justin Lin was better at balancing the actors and the attitudes better than any of these other directors have, and I still kind of miss him more, but I think F. Gary Ray probably did the best job as anyone had since maybe like the original of controlling all these egos and personalities and getting them to work as well as it does. That's probably why maybe I've enjoyed this a lot more than the last one, but I still kind of miss everyone who's left at certain points. And would it really be so ridiculous if Han came back, even though it is kind of bullshit that Jason Statham is in this because he killed Han, and wouldn't that piss them off? But maybe that is how it makes sense that Han came back, because he was never dead, and so they don't have to be as mad at him. Although Jason Statham was phenomenal in this, kind of like close to what he did in Spy, where you're like, holy shit, like why isn't he a bigger star? And then you see one of his solo movies and you're like, right, these suck. Or at least currently, you know. If you're a fan of the franchise, I definitely say check this out. I think it is kind of moving in this direction. It feels like it hasn't moved so far that it's past gone at this point. I feel like they could still save it, and there's certain ways they could naturally do that they haven't because of weird Hollywood nonsense and everything, and they absolutely should, because these films have been an incredible, wonderful light of Hollywood blockbuster filmmaking, having a multinational cast all have fun together while we all laugh and chase away from a submarine with heat-seeking missiles and everything like that. This is like Calvin Ball to the nth degree, but it's a Fast and Furious movie and it makes $1 billion, and I still frankly love this franchise and all of its stupid, weird craziness and its dumb punny titles. It's just kind of the wonderfulness of this franchise hasn't quite worn off, but it kind of makes me feel like the expiration date might be sooner than I would have otherwise liked, and we might be sort of getting into Roger Moore territory, but we haven't quite made it there yet, and I'm happy to keep going down this road until they do. So if you have seen Fate of the Furious and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if would like to.